June 18th meeting of the Lake Forest City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Honorable James Cowhey.
Here.
Alderman Novit.
Here.
Alderman Waldeck. Here. Alderman Moore.
Here.
Alderman Pandaleon.
Here.
Alderman Tack.
Here.
Alderman Schoenheider.
Here.
Alderman Palmer.
Here.
Alderman Adelman.
Here.
9 present, 0 absent. Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Bertie. Will you please join me in a pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first order of business this evening is reports of city officers, the first being comments by mayor. And I'm pleased to announce that I have a resolution of appreciation for Donna Linder for 19 years of service. Many of you know Donna from her work most recently in the last number of years at City Hall. I know I certainly miss her smiling face and her quick wit. Always happy and always accommodating. I'd like to read a resolution into the record and then certainly have Donna come on up. Resolution states, whereas Donna Linder has been dedicated employee of the City of Lake Forest since October 18, 1993, and whereas Donna Linder honorably retired from the city on April 18, 2012, and whereas Donna Linder served in the following positions during her career with the City of Lake Forest. Account Clerk 1, Switchboard Operator, October 1993, was promoted to Account Clerk 2, May 1994, promoted to Account Clerk 3, December 2004, and promoted to Administrative Assistant 2, May 2006. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council that the Council, on behalf of the administration and residents of the community, hereby expresses its appreciation and gratitude to Donna Linder for public service faithfully performed, and be it further resolved that the City Clerk be and hereby is instructed to deliver a copy of this resolution duly signed by the Mayor this 18th day of June 2012. And I'm looking for approval from this council for this resolution for Donna.
So moved.
Second.
All in
I'd like
favor?
to add something to that.
Yes.
I've had an opportunity to work with Donna over the last 6-7 years that we've had the real estate transfer tax, and I've worked with her a lot, and she has just been the consummate professional. And you mentioned her wit. She's a lot of fun to work with, and I've missed her since she's left.
I would ditto that. Any other comments? We get Donna, come on up. I know you're here. You can't hide back there. You said aye. You couldn't get away with that easily.
I forgot that people normally say something when this happens, when you retire. Everything seemed to happen so quick. I am so grateful to the City of Lake Forest, to the council, to Bob, to all of the departments, everyone that I've worked with. It has really been a labor of love. I tried to jot down a couple things. Looks like you guys have a short meeting tonight. So I'll just take up the fluff, you know. But actually, I started working at the City of Lake Forest, not at the City of Lake Forest, when I was 8 years old. I started out cleaning homes with my godmother, who lived to be 104 years old. The first home was right off of Green Bay Road. And during that time, I played with the children in the forest. I got acquainted with Vera College, where I spent my summers in an Upward Bound program. I spent time there before I went on to college and accumulated a few credits at Vera College. So Lake Forest has been very dear to me for a very long time. I worked also at Coldwell Banker, and that kind of laid the foundation for getting into a little bit of real estate, and in the end landed me in the capacity that I ended at. When you were reading the resolution, I thought about how they say there's that dash in between. I felt like that was when she was born, and this is when, you know. But I feel like it's a new life. I've had a lot of experiences here at the City of Lake Forest from, as you said, starting with the switchboard operator and finally working with the birth and the death certificates. Where else, or what other town can you work as an employee and say that I've done everything from holding a gold medal and putting it around my neck, thanks to you, Alderman Novit, something I wasn't supposed to do, I found out later. But, but he started it. From holding a gold medal, letting my children and my grandchildren meet an Olympian. I never done that until the City of Lake Forest. Holding the newborn babies and actually holding the grieving widows when they came in for the death certificates and the birth certificates. Some of them at the same time. I'm here for my death certificate, I'm here for my birth certificate for my baby. I feel like it has been the dash. I've done everything from the beginning to the end. It has been a joyous experience. I'm thankful to the residents. I really endeavored to give the kind of service that I would have wanted to receive to them and to be able to answer their requests and give them the most positive of the most positive experience. I'm really overwhelmed that everything happened so quick. I wasn't aware that the 18th was the deadline, that I had to be out according to IMRF by the 18th, so we were scrambling trying to get everything together. I went from being a single mother of 6 children to leaving here a married woman of 15 years with 6 children, 5 grandchildren, 2 daughter-in-laws, and more to come. So I'm so thankful to God for my experience. To God be the glory for everything that He has done in my life, good, bad, and everything in between. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to serve you. Thank you.
That concludes my comments this evening, and the next item on the agenda is comments by Acting City Manager. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. That's hard to top, but and that's why I'm going to hand this over very quickly to the director of Ragdale, Susan Tillett, who's going to provide us a little overview of an exciting project that Ragdale has just completed. I know members of the council have had an opportunity to tour the main house since it's been renovated, but there's a lot of people at home that haven't, so this is going to be their opportunity. Susan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the staff and the public. This is also my last visit to you. I leave Ragdale at the end of the month after 12 and a half years. And I too would like to say thank you for all of the support we've always received from the council and from the staff and from the citizens. It's been a wonderful ride, and I think I've gotten to show many of you around Ragdale. I think my most fun was showing Bob Kiley and his mom. That was really terrific. Forest and Bluff made a terrific video about the renovation of the house, which Susan is going to access for us. There's a question about whether or not we have sound, but it's so good with these before and after pictures that if not, I'm going to give you color commentary. Okay. We have sound at Ragdale. There's me. Talking about how we were really concerned that the house was going to burn down. I just welcomed back a resident who said the last time she was here she had 3 space heaters going in her room, and with that wiring, that's just terrifying. Phil Rossborough's the board member who ran the project for us, and what you're seeing is newly renovated and then filled in. And talk about the dash. It's really felt like, it looks a lot easier in the video than it actually was. Many of you know Jack Danch, who's Ragdale's longtime property director, and manage this from a staff perspective. And Jack will be there figuring out the geothermal. And we just had our first call from the fire department. That was not a problem, we're glad to say. This is Roland Kula, who's vice president of the board and has been a Ragdale artist. He did an amazing thing by took $100,000 out of the project by offering to do the painting and the wallpapering. And he's done this professionally before. And he literally lived at the Ragdale house for 3 months on an air mattress and moved from room to room, wallpapering and painting. There was a lot of historic work that went into the wallpaper. This is a pattern that's in the hallway that actually was there, and we had it recreated. The best paper, however, is this one in the dining room, which Howard Van Doren Shaw originally designed. We found a little tiny piece of it behind the thermostat and had it recreated. So it was created uniquely for that room, and now it's back. The bedrooms are all wonderful. There's steel behind every dormer in the house. We had major foundation problems. We had major structural problems, all of which we knew to a degree, but there were unpleasant surprises as we got in. We think very highly of our contractor, Bully and Andrews. They've been in business for 120 years. So they were working when Howard Van Doren Shaw was working. And they were able to get the work on this building done within a year. They had bricklayers and masons and plasterers and remarkable woodworkers. So it was a $3.2 million project, 95% of which is totally invisible. But it is the city's building. It will live, I think the next time you do a 150th party, it'll still be there. We call it the bionic house because we have geothermal heating and cooling with 5 wells. We used to have incredible temperature swings, and now it's very even. We had a big public celebration on June 3rd to welcome the community back. And we had the guys who drove the buses said they brought over 600 people, and lots of people just biked and walked over. So we think we probably had 700 or 800 people on the property and 30 artists at work. It was just a wonderful day. But if you haven't seen it yet, we're offering public tours on a regular basis throughout the summer, and we would love to have you come over. We have some historic tours, and then we have some that are going to be more studio walks, so you can see the artists who are currently working there. And I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions?
Well, maybe a compliment. Susan, thank you for your time, at least that I've been on the council. You've made this happen during the most difficult economic time possible.
We picked it.
And it's been successful. I don't know how you did it. And just your skill, your guidance, it's going to be missed. And I'll miss you. But
Thank you.
Truly, thank you for all your efforts.
I
Thanks.
appreciate that.
Well, Susan, as a follow-up to Alderman Novit's comments, if you could stand there for 1 minute. The mayor has a resolution he's going to read now.
Oh my gosh, I get a resolution?
You didn't think you were going to get away that easy, did you? Now, I would like to read this resolution into the record as well. Whereas Susan Page Tillett will retire after 12 years serving as executive director of Ragdale, whereas the city of Lake Forest has enjoyed a tremendously successful partnership with Ragdale since 1986, when Alice Judson Hayes donated the Howard Van Doren Shaw buildings and 5-acre grounds to the city of Lake Forest. And whereas in 2001, under Susan's management, the city of Lake Forest signed a 99-year lease with Ragdale, ensuring its long-term future as a thriving artist colony and asset to the city of Lake Forest. Whereas under Susan's leadership over the years, the Ragdale Foundation raised in excess of $10 million for building improvements and historic rehabilitations, culminating in the recent complete renovation of Shaw's Ragdale House. Whereas Susan Additionally, help strengthen Ragdale's financial structure, build its reputation as one of the finest artist retreats in the country, improve its fundraising capabilities, and enhance the Ragdale board and staff. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council that the Council, on behalf of the administration and residents of the community, hereby expresses its appreciation and gratitude to Susan Page Tillett for a public-private service outstandingly performed, and wishes her all the best in future endeavors. Be it further resolved that the city clerk be and hereby is instructed to deliver a copy of this resolution duly signed by the mayor this 18th day of June 2012. And we want to, first of all, I'd like to, because I always forget to do it, so I like the,
Move to adopt the resolution.
there you go. All in
Second.
favor? All in favor?
I'll see, but
We got it.
Aye.
There you go. We got it
I'm very
official.
touched.
But I certainly want to thank you too for all your hard work. I was honored to be able to see the Ragdale before you started the renovation. I was honored to see it afterwards, and it was truly a spectacular renovation. And the hard work and to believe that you could have pulled it off in this economy as well is quite remarkable, and that's certainly a testament both to you and your hard work and to all the residents of Lake Forest. But it's a great treasure in Lake Forest, and those that haven't seen it in the public, I certainly welcome you to go see it because it's really a beautiful home, especially now.
Yeah.
And I'd like
Thank
to
you.
present this to you, Susan.
Thank you, Bob.
The last item under my report this evening, last week the city received an inquiry from the Lake County Board Chairman asking for support of the proposed extension of Route 53. And the City Council is on record, I think it was back in 1996, we approved a resolution supporting the extension of the Route 53 highway north to, I think it's 120 in Lake County. But prior to responding to Mr. Stolman's request, we thought that we would bring it here this evening, see if the council still was in favor of that, and if so, then we will follow up with a letter from the mayor and the city council to the Tollway Authority on behalf of Lake County. So I put it, I know a couple of you contacted me saying that you were in support of it and you thought that that would be a good idea, but wanted to just make sure that we had it on the record before we sent the letter formally on behalf of the city.
Yeah, clearly, I mean, it's a project that's just long overdue in the county. The county's been growing exponentially. The roads haven't been expanding exponentially, and it's kind of time to have an area for the traffic to move quickly. It's horrible as you're driving northward and you hit Lake Cook Road and there's no other place to go. And it would be great if it did hit the terminus at 120 and would kind of move the traffic in Lake County at this point. So I'm in support of it. I hope the council is. It's a worthy project.
Is it possible to get a spur to connect to the hospital project? I'm sorry.
That's
I'm
later
all
on
for
in the
it
agenda.
later.
We'll get to that later. Okay, if I don't hear any opposition, then we'll prepare a letter over the mayor's signature and carbon copy to full council. And that completes my report for this evening.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Our next item on the agenda this evening is comments by council members. Any comments this evening? No? We're hearing none. We'll move on to the next item, which is an opportunity for citizens to address the city council on non-agenda items. So I know we have the hospital coming up next. You'll have an opportunity at that point, but any other non-agenda items? No? Hearing none, we'll move on. The next item is items for the omnibus vote consideration. There are three. I'll read all three and then...
Before you get into this, there's one item I'm going to ask you to take them separately because item B on the agenda, which would be relating to awarding liquor licenses for 2 restaurants. My wife has had involvement in those projects, and I'd like to recuse myself from any vote involving those items. I think it would be inappropriate.
I think that's acceptable.
The appropriate procedure then would be to have the consent agenda or the omnibus agenda for items A, C, and D, and then after the omnibus vote, we can go to that item B.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Therefore, Vic, what I'll do is I'll just read, I'll read all four of them, and then we'll go back and take the liquor license separately. Is that, okay. So the four items that we have are, one, being a consideration of approval of prevailing wage resolution. Two, being the ordinance revising the city code regarding the number of liquor licenses. The third one being the approval of resolutions required for bank purposes. And then the fourth simply being the approval of the June 4th, 2012 regular city council minutes. So any other, can we take the three and get those out of the way?
We need a motion second.
Okay.
Roll call the A, C, and D.
And so move for approval A, C, and D.
I'll second.
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandaleon.
Aye.
Alderman Schoenheider.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderman Adelman.
Aye.
8 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you,
Now,
Bertie.
We have a motion and second on item B, and that would be a roll call vote as well.
I move to approve item B, the ordinance revising the city code regarding number of liquor licenses. Second.
A roll call vote, please.
Alderman Novit.
Abstain.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandaleon.
Aye.
Alderman Schoenheider.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderman Adelman.
Aye.
7 yeas, 1 stay, motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Bertie. Our next item on the agenda is ordinances. We have one being a consideration of ordinance granting a special use permit approving the Northwestern Lake Forest Hospital Campus Master Plan and establishing conditions on approval. This is a first reading. Be presented by Kathy Cerniak, Director of Community Development. Kathy?
Thank you, Mayor Cowhey, members of the commission, members of the council. I'm here tonight to present to you the Plan Commission's recommendation on the hospital's request for a special use permit to approve a new master plan for the hospital campus. I may talk a little bit longer tonight than I normally do, but I'll do it briefly, but I do think this obviously is a very large project. The Plan Commission spent a number of months on it, so since it's the only item on the agenda, I'll ask for your indulgence. I want to talk about three things. I want to talk about the master plan in general, because there was a lot of confusion during the process. What is a master plan? What a master plan is and what a master plan is not. I want to review on a very, very high level the project. I know you all have received copies of the master plan, so I'm not going to go through it in detail, but for the benefit of anyone who may be watching and is not familiar, I just want to hit the real highlights. And then third, I want to present the Plan Commission's recommendation to you, talk a little bit about the process they followed, their areas of focus, and the conditions that they recommended to you. The Plan Commission at a number of their meetings really talked through what exactly this master plan is intended to do. And I think they concluded that first and foremost in going through this process, both at the Plan Commission level and City Council level, it really was a decision whether or not the community wanted to endorse the revitalization of the hospital campus. So in the eyes of the Plan Commission, their recommendation to you is a unanimous and a very hearty endorsement of revitalization of the hospital campus. The master plan that is presented establishes a framework for future decisions. It does not present you with detailed building plans, detailed plans for intersection improvements, detailed landscape plans. All of those have been looked at conceptually, and the master plan sets many parameters for how those plans will ultimately evolve and how they will be judged going forward. This master plan replaces a previous master plan that covered the period of 2000 to 2005 for the hospital. It was adopted, I believe, in 2001. Many projects were completed under that master plan. This new master plan really acknowledges that the hospital is now looking to a new future, is really taking a very different direction. So approval of a new master plan in its entirety and a new special use permit really was determined to be appropriate by the Plan Commission. the project components, and again, I'm just barely touching on the details of the plan, but this plan really is being driven by the need for a replacement hospital. After the affiliation with Northwestern, there was some serious due diligence done in looking at the existing campus, and it was very definitively determined that the existing hospital facility simply cannot meet the needs of healthcare today, either from patient demands, technology, operational efficiencies. So this plan really is, at the outset, about a replacement hospital which will be constructed in phase 1 of this project. Following up on the replacement hospital, obviously parking associated with that as part of the plan, but ingress and egress improvements are part of the phase 1 plan, and I'll talk a little bit more about those in a few moments. But it was recognized by the hospital at the outset of this project, in very early discussions with staff, that in order to do anything with this campus, some of the ingress and egress improvements that in fact had been talked about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, really needed to be part of the work that was going to happen at the front end of this project. Another key component of this plan is that it really, for the first time, identifies some clear perimeter buffer areas for the campus. In the past, there were discussions about setbacks, but nothing was really established as clearly as it is established in this plan. Importantly, as part of that earlier master plan, there was a memorandum of understanding entered into by the hospital, and it was adopted as part of that master plan. That memorandum was in response to questions at that time from the neighboring property owners about what would happen on this, essentially the 40-acre farm field that exists. In those early discussions, the hospital knew that there would be a future need for that property for health-related uses, but there was really no concept at all how that 40-acre property would be used. The Plan Commission recognized and actually applauded the fact that today's master plan, the master plan that's presented to you tonight, exceeds all the parameters that were envisioned as part of that memorandum of understanding. In fact, the setbacks that were established in that earlier memorandum, the setback from Waukegan Road was established at 50 feet as part of that memorandum, and from the Lane Lorraine properties, that setback was 120 feet. The plan that's presented to you today has a setback from Waukegan Road of 250 feet and a 200-foot setback from the Lane Lorraine properties. So that memorandum, as it had established a foundation, was used going forward and was looked at first by the hospital in developing this plan. Another key component of this project is when the hospital moves to the replacement hospital in 2017, the existing campus would be reused. As with most master plans, the first phase of the master plan is much more detailed than the later phases. What the master plan does acknowledge is that that south campus will be reused for educational and research-related uses. And those would be detailed more later on through the process. Finally, the master plan, as I just referenced, proposes a phased development, and I'll talk about that with this graphic. You all do have this in your master plan. I would also note for anyone in the audience that doesn't have a copy, the master plan is in the back as well as a copy of the ordinance. The master plan for the first time really identifies 3 key areas, or breaks the hospital campus into 3 areas. The total 160 acres is broken up into South Campus, which is the existing hospital facility for the most part, Middle Campus, which will be the location of the proposed replacement hospital, and North Campus, which currently is the location of the fitness center and the child care center. As I mentioned, the replacement hospital is really the driver of this plan. Importantly, the replacement hospital moves to the north away from its current location, which is very, very close to the existing single-family residential neighborhood just to the west. By doing this, the Plan Commission really recognized the opportunity to really redirect traffic generated by the hospital itself, focusing on directing that traffic to the east and west rather than to Deerpath. Along with the replacement hospital in the first phase, a medical office building is proposed, associated parking that will be located close to this hospital. As I noted, the details of exactly how this works out, what the building footprint is, how much parking is contained in structures, how much is surface, those are all details that are yet to be worked out. This is really the front part of this process. In addition, as part of phase one, a 25,000 square foot addition is proposed to the Health and Fitness Center. A couple different options for locations have been identified as part of this plan. The second phase, as I mentioned, primarily involves the reoccupancy of the existing campus once the replacement hospital is occupied. That would occur after we do essentially a verification traffic study to really look at whether traffic generated by the replacement hospital is consistent with the volumes that were estimated, and if people coming to and leaving the hospital are using the routes that were identified. There is also included in your packet a future phase, which the Plan Commission and staff really pushed the hospital to come forward with. There were some questions from residents. The hospital acknowledged that this future phase is out there, that they really don't know. But in response to the desire from the Plan Commission to really at least have something on paper, there was a future phase identified that could see an addition to this, to the existing hospital, and perhaps another medical office building. So that's just a very high-level overview of the plan that you have in front of you. Again, just to reemphasize, the Plan Commission really did focus on traffic, and there's an opportunity with the relocation of the hospital to direct traffic to the east and west. To the east, by way of a new direct connection to Route 41, which would be a right-in, right-out. There have already been discussions with Senator Susan Garrett. IDOT has endorsed this project, and work to implement this project is already underway. As far as the initial approvals and the initial studies. In addition, a second access to Waukegan Road is proposed that would help to alleviate traffic on Westmoreland, disperse the traffic. This also would be a right-in, right-out. Improvements are proposed at Westmoreland and Deerpath, but importantly, as part of this first phase, traffic estimates indicate that the volume of traffic generated by the hospital onto Deerpath will lessen. So certainly improvements are needed at this intersection, geometric improvements, improvements to improve sight lines, some additional turn lanes. But the intent of the Plan Commission was not to direct traffic here, but to the extent possible, direct traffic east and west. Moving on to the Plan Commission's recommendation. Although the Plan Commission spent 8 months talking about this project and discussed many elements, as they came down to their final discussion, these are really the items that they really focused on and really pushed the hospital and pushed staff on. And these were the items that they heard the most comment from members of the public. Traffic, protection of neighborhoods, really achieving a park-like campus. The Plan Commission really talked about the fact that this really should not be an urban campus, nor did they want to see a suburban office-type campus. They thought there was a real opportunity with this property to achieve something that was unique and that really made a statement for Lake Forest. The Plan Commission focused on building height. Building height was really a key concern. And they also talked about process. Normally, if a project like this would go through a special use permit, the city would really step away and allow the petitioner to go through the design development process on their own. In this case, the design development process for phase 1 is probably somewhere like around 18 to 24 months. And the Plan Commission was concerned about just sending the hospital off to have that conversation by themselves. So in a moment, I'll talk about a condition that they are recommending to you that would suggest an enhanced process. Just to talk briefly about two of the items that the Plan Commission focused on. Setbacks is one of them. Again, I will note that a 250-foot setback is proposed along Waukegan Road, exceeding what was previously required. A 200-foot setback along this Lane the Ray neighborhood. There currently is a parking lot right in this area that I believe is set back 120 feet from that property line. As part of this plan in later phases, this parking lot would actually be shifted to respect that newly established 200-foot setback. In this area, the 120-foot setback reflects the fact that the existing buildings are located generally in that area. As part of this plan, there is no new construction proposed in this area. And the other key item that the Plan Commission talked about was building height. And in their discussion, it took a while to get to the consensus that this plan wasn't the appropriate place to determine whether a building should be 76 feet tall or 91 feet tall or 82 feet tall. So they took the approach of establishing height zones. What is reflected on this height zone diagram, which is included in the master plan, is the maximum height permitted in these different areas. The yellow area is 45 feet, and the Plan Commission talked about this area and the fact that a parking structure is proposed in that area, one or more parking structures. A parking structure could be built within a 35-foot height limit. However, the Plan Commission felt that allowing that flexibility could at least allow the conversation of should there be more surface parking or less surface parking. Could a portion of the first floor of a parking deck be below grade? Could there be some features on the roof? Could there be a green roof, or could there be some other opportunities? So as the Plan Commission talked through heights, they really did that in a way that allows for flexibility. The area that was, first I will say that the intent of the Plan Commission and the way the condition regarding height is written is that in the 45, in all of these height areas, those are to include any rooftop mechanical equipment. A large part of the discussion focused on this 81-foot core height overlay district. And the Plan Commission really worked on the condition to challenge the hospital to really try to accommodate all of the rooftop mechanicals within that 81 feet. However, there is a portion of that condition you will see that allows that if there's due diligence done and there are technical reasons that cannot happen, that during the further review process that the mechanicals, not the building itself, could exceed that height of 81 feet, so long as the mechanicals were appropriately screened, appropriately located, and based on the overall project, an overall acceptable project. The Plan Commission recognized that this part of the campus, middle campus, really is an area that essentially has been in a holding pattern. It has long been acknowledged that this part of the campus would be developed for healthcare uses. As you look from Waukegan Road across that field, you do see the ComEd poles along 41 and the railroad tracks, and there's two series, and those are at heights of 134 feet and 100 feet, just for reference. Moving on to the Plan Commission's recommended conditions of approval. The Plan Commission recommended 25 conditions of approval. That is a pretty extensive list of conditions, as some of you who have seen special use permits before. There are, I believe, 4 additional conditions that are more general conditions that we often put on special use permits. Oops. The Plan Commission focused the conditions in these areas. They felt that an enhanced review process was appropriate. As I mentioned, rather than just send the hospital away, the Plan Commission is recommending that an advisory committee be appointed by the city manager, much as occurred with the city's own water treatment plant. A group importantly, this group does not serve as the hospital's project team, but serves as an advisory link. That group would need to understand the master plan, understand the conditions of approval, ultimately approved by the city council, and really play an advisory role to the hospital project team as well as to city staff. That condition is condition number 1 on page 2 of your ordinance, and importantly, exactly how that process would be implemented has not been detailed. We really wanted to present this to the council, get your take on it, see if you were comfortable with the various conditions of approval by the Plan Commission, and then if you are, between first reading and second reading, the city attorney will work to detail that process and fully expand the ordinance in that area. As part of that process, the Plan Commission talked about the fact that they had spent 8 months already on this project. And although some members of the commission would change over the time period, that they felt that they had a strong knowledge base and familiarity with this project. They were concerned about bringing another review board into this, the Building Review Board, a board that primarily deals with single-family residential homes. They were concerned about the startup time to get them up to speed, whether this project was really something that was beyond their scope. So in that condition number 1, what is recommended is that the Plan Commission continue to be the sole recommending body to the City Council on this project. So as Phase 1 is developed, whether it comes forward in one large overall plan, which is very unlikely, or whether it comes to the Plan Commission as an overall detailed site plan, and then one building plan and a landscape plan, that each of those would be reviewed by the Plan Commission in a process yet to be detailed by the city attorney. They would make a recommendation on whether that plan is consistent with the approved master plan and the consistent conditions of approval. And that recommendation would come forward to the city council. So that process would assure that there's continued community discussion, but also limit that discussion, to be fair to the hospital, so that it's based on the framework of the master plan and the special use permit. The conditions also, a number of conditions speak to road improvements and traffic safety and speak to the sequencing of that, and importantly speak to the fact, as I mentioned, that down the road, 1 or more additional traffic studies will be done to just make sure the traffic is as we thought it would be and that the improvements made are sufficient. There are recommended conditions that speak to neighborhood protection. I believe there's one of the last conditions, maybe 23, 24, that speaks to neighborhood security. That was an issue that was raised by neighbors. There's a number of conditions that speak to overall design and sustainability aspects of this campus. There's some real opportunities in the eyes of the Plan Commission to really achieve something spectacular in working with the advisory group and the hospital planning team. There are also conditions that speak to assessing financial impacts. And particularly with the financial impacts, in this area too, there are conditions that state the intent of the Plan Commission. If the council is supportive of those conditions, we will look to the city attorney to further detail how those conditions would be implemented between first reading and final approval, both to give the council certainty, but also to provide some certainty for the hospital as well. In summary, the Plan Commission, at the end of 8 months of consideration and 5 meetings, many of which extended beyond 2 hours, 2 to 3.5 hours, the Plan Commission commended the hospital for being responsive to many of the issues raised. The Plan Commission recognized that this master plan doesn't answer all the questions, but they also came to realize that it shouldn't. We're just simply not at that point in the process. This is a starting point. This is an opportunity to establish a strong foundation, some certainty with respect to different aspects of how the hospital campus will develop, and will allow us to go forward. Mr. Mayor, as you noted, this is before the council tonight just for first reading. There will be, we will look to the city attorney to do some language refinement, pick up on any direction you have, and if appropriate, detail further the review process and some of the financial impact conditions. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I would also note that Mr. McAfee is also in the audience tonight.
I have a question on surface water. Going through this, I know there was lots of discussion about surface water. There was discussions about being in the second ward, the south of Anuencia Gardens. All the water that's currently in that hospital goes underneath 41 and flows through. With increasing hard surfaces, and did I miss something? I hope I did, but what plans have been put in place to limit more surface water into the second ward, to be selfish, but into the residential areas in H.L. Stone and Anuencia Gardens and the ponds?
Early in their discussions, the first couple meetings, the Plan Commission did hear a presentation on stormwater. And as part of this project, new stormwater detention ponds will need to be created on this site. Although we don't know exactly the configuration or the location, what's proposed are a couple, one or more ponds in this area. The existing pond in this area would also be expanded. Importantly, the hospital's plan for stormwater offloads the city system by taking some of the water that currently is generated by the south part of the campus and directing it north, freeing up more capacity for the city to better handle drainage from the adjacent residential neighborhood. The Plan Commission felt comfortable that a strong groundwork was laid for stormwater management. Like every other aspect of the plan, detailed engineering plans will need to be submitted and will need to be reviewed through our normal process. City engineer will be involved and has already been involved in many discussions with their engineer, and all of the applicable rules and regulations, both the city regulations as well as those from the county, will need to be met.
Will there be an opportunity for a measurable benchmark for net surface water effects? Is there an opportunity for a guideline to be established when the plan gets more refined?
I would have to look to the city attorney for that answer.
I'll defer to the city
Sorry,
engineer.
city engineer. I get you confused.
I'm not asking for what it would be. I'm just saying, is there an opportunity for a guideline that could be measured? Because when the hospital's built and we get a big rain and it floods, people are going to say it's because of the hospital. And is there a way to determine whether or not that would be the case? And
yes to all those questions, Alderman. As part of any development, whether it's hospital, subdivision, our ordinance, which we copy the Lake County stormwater, requires to provide detention volume. So just for pure numbers, right now, let's say they added 10,000 square feet. There's a formula which calculates how much volume will that enable for the 10,000 square feet on a 100-year rain event, which is the maximum. They have to provide the detention volume. So what you are seeing in that picture is there are areas of pockets of detention ponds throughout that campus which will equate to the amount of impervious, and our storm sewers are designed for 10-year, but all the subdivisions and hospitals, any development is required to provide a 100-year rain event. So all those ponds you are seeing on that map right now, even though there are tentative locations, they provide for that volume of anything new impervious. That's required by the ordinance for anybody. And what will happen is, so let's say there's a big rain event, those ponds will hold water, and there'll be a restrictor pipe. So basically a smaller pipe which will exit those ponds, so it'll hold the water, and it'll only release the normal rainwater as if there was no development. So that's a standard practice for any development in the city.
Ramesh, might it be feasible to pump some of the water over to a detention pond on the golf course, maybe expand the detention pond on the 12th fairway. Then it could be used for irrigation purposes, cutting back on some of the city consumption of water at the golf course. I mean, is that economically viable to pump it into a detention pond on the other side of the highway?
But that's, again, that's not part of our ordinance dictates that any development has to provide their own detention on their property. Yeah, so they cannot say that we're gonna push the water downstream. They are required to provide on their site for 100-year storm event based on any new impervious. That's why you see all those ponds, any new subdivision, you see those ponds, that's what those ponds are. Those are detention ponds for the amount of impervious you take.
So, if, I know that 100-year floods, it's a measurement of
Around 6 inches rain in 24 hours. That's
6 inches in 24 hours.
That's correct.
And that doesn't happen very often, except for last year.
It's 1 in 100. It's not 1 in 100 years. The probability is 33 years is what they're saying. It's 33
About
years. Yep.
The 100-year floods about every 33 years. Okay.
That's the mathematical formula, not Ramesh Kanapuradi. Mathematical.
It's a noun, right? Not a verb, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So you're comfortable with the detention, the potential to set up a proper detention system as the plan gets more defined?
Yes, we are very comfortable. Again, the way to look at it is right now, let's just say there's a 1 cubic feet per second water going out. With the new improvements, that 1 cubic feet per second cannot exceed. It has to stay at 1 cubic feet with all the new impervious. That means they're going to provide all that volume on that site to hold the water and contain within the site and still release only 1 cubic feet per second.
Okay, so if we have current problems, this would not be an opportunity to improve them?
It will.
Only to keep them the same?
As Kathy mentioned, some of the water, again, not all of the water does go to 41 and Deerpath, but the southern half of the hospital drainage area does go. With these improvements, they are trying to move that water up. So in a way, it does enhance the flow going south, and they're going to hold the water on their campus, and then it's going to still route underneath the railroad tracks to the golf course, heading east towards the creek. That's the normal overflow, overland flow path, is from 41 to the golf course to the creek. Ultimately, everything drains east.
Alderman, can I just mention that this evening we're not here to design the project, and I think Alderman Adelman, while that doesn't necessarily meet our codes right now, the City Council could waive our codes down the road if you felt that there was a design component that met the needs of the hospital, met the needs of the neighbors, was in the best interest of the city and so forth. But that kind of a detail is way down the road, and I'm a little concerned if we have those conversations tonight, we're going to mislead people that we're actually here designing the project this evening, which we're not.
Well,
So
my question again was, are there rules available for a design down the road? I'm not asking for a design.
yeah, absolutely, and I think what Ramesh said early on is whether this is the hospital or Lake Forest College or the Whispering Oaks subdivision or whatever the case might be, we have rules in place that are going to deal with those kinds of things. And then I think as a part of the review process that's been recommended by the Plan Commission is to say, can we be creative in the way we're addressing these issues with technology of today to address some problems that have existed for a number of years in Lake Forest? Because I think, we've talked about it, the Plan Commission talked about it, what can we do with the 41 Deerpath intersection, and what can we do with this and that? Again, I think this gives us an opportunity based on the direction the Plan Commission has given us and based on the direction the council will give us as to how to proceed forward with the design elements as they go forward.
I agree 100%. When we read the draft ordinance, we got as granular as neighborhood safety, but surface water wasn't addressed. It's the only aspect that I was going to bring up outside of the 29 points myself.
And we can add that into some of the whereas clauses so it doesn't get lost in the process too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Kathy, I just had a couple of questions, and it's helping me, because I sometimes just don't understand things. Plan Commission did a great job, and their efforts are appreciated. Curiosity for me was we have a build zone that goes up to 82 feet, and that area, curiously was located, and it covers an area that has the largest detention pond in the project, but the project will be refined, but there was a proviso on that, that if there's air conditioners, building components that would go above the 82-foot line, okay, that could be added on balancing of their need, utility, but there was no limit. And I was wondering why the Plan Commission didn't cap beyond the 82-foot level. It seems like an obvious question.
They talked about that a lot, and they went back and forth. The Plan Commission felt strongly that they wanted to do everything possible. They wanted this advisory committee, if it's established, to do everything they could to push the rooftop mechanicals down. So I believe the hospital would love to see a caveat on that says the rooftop mechanicals can go up to 96 feet. The Plan Commission felt that if that upper limit was put on paper, then that would be achieved, that opened the door wider. I think what we heard from the hospital is that worst case scenario is probably not the right term to use, but I'll use it anyway. In the worst case scenario, the highest building component would be 81 feet and the mechanicals would be up to 96 feet. I think that even the hospital said there's value in having that discussion, talking about whether there are some opportunities, maybe not to get everything under 81 feet, but that's why the Plan Commission didn't put that 96 out there. They just felt like they wanted to push for 81, and ultimately that ended up being their recommendation.
Okay. And just general question, because one of the largest questions on the whole project is its impact on traffic. And the first thing you get with all these roads being reconfigured or exits being put on Route 41, who's going to pay for that? Is the city going to contribute? Is the hospital picking up the tab? Where's it go?
As it was presented by the hospital, and as the conditions are written, the road improvements at 41, at Waukegan, at Deerpath, and Westmoreland will be fully funded by the hospital. The Plan Commission did suggest a recommendation to you, and I don't recall what number it is, but that the hospital also fund a portion of an off-site improvement. And that would be the initial, and I'll get the name wrong again, the preliminary intersection design study for Route 41 and Deerpath. The Plan Commission recognized that if the hospital does nothing, 41 and Deerpath intersection is a problem for our community. We know if we get that 100-year rain, it floods. They're also directly opposing left turn lanes. So the Plan Commission really saw this perhaps as the most significant leverage that the community has ever had to get the state's attention and at least get Route 41 and Deerpath on its radar. To the best of our knowledge, that intersection isn't even on the state's radar. Funding this initial traffic study, perhaps as part of a larger study that the city does, is going to be the first step in getting that issue on the table for IDOT.
And just the obvious question to really blow the budget for the hospital, as far as the demographics of who's going to be attracted to the new hospital, is it more coming from northern Lake County or southern Lake County? And then if it's coming from northern Lake County, okay, we have the exit coming southbound off of 41. Obviously, the pie in the sky is trying to get some northbound egress or ingress, which again would be horribly costly, but is there any possibility that could happen?
The right-in, right-out, if I understand your question correctly, the right-in, right-out on 41 was all that IDOT would entertain.
Okay.
There was not the possibility of creating a full interchange there. Now, in the future, and as something separate than the hospital project, does the configuration of this intersection change, or Route 60 and Route 41? That's a much bigger project, much bigger discussion. Certainly the hospital will be part of that discussion and may have some proportionate share, but so might Conway Office Park and the city. And so getting more than a right-in, right-out here at this point in time is not something that IDOT would support.
Okay, because similar, years ago, Abbott got, I guess, a traffic light put in on Route 41, just a little bit north of the two interchanges in North Chicago. And it would be great if they could do that there, but, you know, no possibility, I think is what you're saying.
The discussion with IDOT was very strong on the right in, right out limitation.
Okay.
Kath, the full build-out of this master plan, are we talking a couple $100 million, $300 million, what's the financial scope on a full build-out basis?
The cost of construction?
Yeah, development, hard costs, soft
I will let you
costs,
ask Mr. McAfee that question. I don't know that number.
approximately.
For the first phase, or?
You're going to come forward.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You know, before Tom comes forward, are you
Yeah.
done, Kathy?
Well, why don't we, I had in mind, Bob, that we would, if the council wants to have their questions for Kathy, and then we'd have the petitioner, if you want to make a comment, and then I would have the, any of the public make their comments, and then we'll bring it back here again to the council. So, you want to remain on this track for a minute, and then,
I have a,
So what phase are we in now? Just asking Kathy
We're
questions?
asking
It's gonna
Kathy
come back to
questions.
us later for comments and questions? Okay.
you'll have some public comment, we'll bring it back here again, so.
I have a question, but it's sort of a broad, nebulous, probably kind of hard to answer question. But here it is. I too think the Plan Commission did an amazing job. And I think the hospital was very responsive to the Plan Commission. I commend them for that. I think that perhaps a challenge here is that the type of hospital that Lake Forest is used to and wants to see built is perhaps something different than the type of hospital that Northwestern is used to building. And you know, there's something about the feel to Lake Forest Hospital, and it might have something to do with the way the building looks and the flowered wallpaper, and that's obsolete, and nobody cares about flowered wallpaper when your husband's dying of a heart attack. But there's something about that lawn, that big green expanse as you come up to it, and it kind of carries over into the community feel and caring nature of the hospital. How do we preserve that? Which of these 25 points really speaks to that? I think it can be done. I think it can be done beautifully. And I think it should be done because the hospital is such an important institution, right up there with our educational institutions. But how do we control that? Can we control it?
I think that was part of the Plan Commission's reason for recommending an enhanced process. They didn't want the hospital just to go away for 18 to 24 months and develop their plans. I think the Plan Commission recognized that this will be a very different site after this project is completed. But they did try to, I can't tell you what number of the conditions, but they used a number of the conditions. Things like the amount of open space on this campus, as detailed in the master plan, exceeds the city's requirement for open space, and exceeds what was envisioned as part of the 2001 Memorandum of Understanding. The Plan Commission had that discussion that this isn't an urban campus, nor should it be, but we also don't want to see just a suburban office campus. So they talked about landscaping, and they talked about berming, and they talked about open space. We're not there yet, but I do believe that the process that the Plan Commission is recommending to you, the opportunity for a group of technical and design advisors to be part of this process, to continue an opportunity for community involvement as we go forward, and to allow the Plan Commission, who spent a lot of time on this, to look at what comes forward and say, yes, it meets the conditions, or no, it doesn't, and to work with the hospital. So I have a broad answer to your broad question, but I think that was the intent in the conditions, that this has the opportunity to be something special, and the Plan Commission was convinced that the hospital is very sincere in working with the community to try and make that happen.
Kathy, can I ask a follow-up to Alderman Waldeck's question? Just to clarify some more of the intent, of the Plan Commission relative to this enhanced process, as you call it, and the technical advisory group. Did the Plan Commission envision this group to be reporting on a regular basis back to them? I think I'm still, and perhaps as you suggest, Vic will define that greater as we get a little further along. But I'm curious as to, they've spent 8 months on it, and I would agree with everyone here. They've done an extraordinary job. But I'm curious just to kind of get in their minds just a little bit from your perspective on how they envision this working and the process a little bit more clearly.
Well, I think the idea for an advisory committee really came to them kind of at the end of that 8 months. I think in the last 2 meetings they were talking about it. In their report to you, they went so far as to suggest areas of expertise or areas of knowledge that the city manager might consider in appointing members to this group. Expertise in architecture, in commercial architecture or healthcare, expertise in landscape, expertise in preservation. They suggested that perhaps a member of the Plan Commission, it might be appropriate for the city manager to make that connection, which would put in place the opportunity for a regular reporting to the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission talked about a representative of open lands being part of this. Someone who understands, maybe has a connection between the hospital and the community, someone who understands city processes, and certainly people who understand the surrounding neighborhood. So I think they thought about what this committee might look like. They wanted to be sure there were opportunities for continued community input, but they also wanted to make sure that the hospital again and again didn't start over at step 1 of the process. They wanted to make sure that this approval achieves something and that we're at a certain level. And I think you're right, that's where we will look to the city attorney. If you authorize an enhanced process, that's something that he will actually detail, and I can't give you more detail than that right now on how it would look.
But I think to Alderman Waldeck's comment, that the term technical advisory may be a bit of a misnomer in that you're going to have technical components to it, but I think you're going to have people involved in it that will help us create a character that perhaps is what you're looking for.
Technical and design advisory.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is there any possibility of extracting some element of the redesign of traffic flow from the master plan? In other words, particularly accelerating the right in, right out as an early experiment, because as I recall, and I actually went to the planning commission meetings at the end, there was a discussion about what the volume of service of the hospital was going to be, and a prediction that it was going to be about the same as it is now in the beginning, and that they didn't expect a huge increase in traffic as a result of the new hospital, which leads me to believe that perhaps early on we ought to establish the right in, right out and see what happens in terms of traffic flow with the existing hospital, since it's going to be 5 years minimum before the new hospital is built anyway. That allows us a little bit of time to work on the traffic aspect, which I think everybody agrees is of huge concern to locals. And I will say, somebody asked a good question about where does the traffic come from, because the reality is the traffic comes from the north. Healthcare does not drive north in northern Illinois, it drives south. And everybody who comes to Lake Forest Hospital comes from Kenosha, they come from Pleasant Prairie, they come from McHenry, and they come down south, and they're going to return north. So when they get in on that right in, right out, they are going to want to turn around and go the other direction. So early on, we need to figure out how is that traffic going to turn around and go that way. And I think that could be extracted from the rest of this, knowing that it's an integral part of the master plan, but started early so that we have more time to work on it.
And that's absolutely what's occurring. The work has already begun on the right in, right out. There already have been a number of meetings. I know that the hospital engineers are working to move that piece of the project forward. It was important to the Plan Commission that piece be moved forward. There's a timeline that clearly shows that piece of the project being advanced. We can't be sure that there won't be hiccups as we work with IDOT, but there's every intent and everything is in motion to move that piece forward. And then importantly, as a condition indicates, that after the replacement hospital is operational, there will be a pause, and we will have the hospital conduct another traffic study, or the city will conduct the traffic study being funded by the hospital, to assure that before we bring new research and educational uses to the South Campus, that we really have that good understanding of where's the traffic coming from, where's it going, how's it getting there, how's it leaving. Because the Plan Commission really recognized that it's that reoccupancy of the South Campus that really has the potential to impact the traffic numbers significantly. So yes, in answer to your question, the right in, right out is being advanced and is moving forward as we speak.
Kathy, I'm sorry, I had one more question if I might. Within the confines, and it's been brought up here a couple times, I think Alderman Novit mentioned it, within the confines of the special use permit, there's discussion about the city not being obligated to fund particular items, traffic study, things of that nature. The other component, and I think each of us at some point in time have been asked by residents, and this property certainly being in the third ward, I've been asked by a lot of residents, not only to guarantee that we're not going to be out of pocket but for direct costs, but also to frame what any future cost obligations the city may have by way of services may be. Has there been any work done on that yet, or again, are we still too preliminary in that?
There are conditions that speak to that, and again, if the council gives us a nod tonight and indicates support for this concept, the whole idea of impact fees, how they're established, that will be something that will be, how they're implemented, that will be something that will be detailed between first reading and final reading by the city attorney. Because certainly not only do you want to know how you're going to assure that taxpayers aren't going to bear the brunt of any costs, but the hospital also wants some certainty as to how that's all going to play out, who's going to decide it, and I'm sure you'll see in second reading something detailed from the city attorney on that.
He's got a big job coming up.
He likes his billable hours.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Kathy from here? Yes.
Got a couple of first of all, as a veteran of a number of projects of this magnitude, when I was on the Plan Commission, this is extraordinary, and it's an enormous amount of work. And I just want to reiterate the amount of thinking and care that has gone into this whole thing is apparent when you look at the output. And so I think we all ought to just recognize the vision and the sort of care that's been taken to this point. And in setting up the process and the phasing and the re-entry points for the city and the concept of having a follow-on or a sort of a following commission, if you will, or a following committee that'll keep track of this and make sure that the vision isn't sort of forgotten along the way. Those are kind of new concepts that don't get brought to bear very often. So I think the Plan Commission deserves a lot of credit for establishing a good collection of guidelines and conditions that will really provide a lot of input for the city and make sure that the vision that everybody would like to see developed here actually happens. And so I just want to maybe embellish the comments a little bit just by virtue of some of the experiences that I had in my day in that body. I guess the other thing is, it's interesting to me how we've sort of dived right into the weeds here. And I think it might make sense to back up for a second and just recognize where we are. Yes, Lake Forest Hospital is a pretty place, but for all intents and purposes in the modern era of healthcare, it is an orphan, or it was an orphan. And it didn't have much of a future in the healthcare world as we knew it even 5 years ago, and certainly as we will know it in the next decades. So I think this is an unbelievable opportunity that the city has been presented with by the acquisition of the hospital by Northwestern, where all of a sudden we go from what are we going to do with this hospital that really doesn't have a future in the current world of healthcare. It's admittedly a beautiful site, but you know, we have the opportunity now to have a world-class medical facility that's tied into one of the absolutely best hospitals on the planet. And I've actually already had some benefit of that because I've been a long-time Northwestern customer, if you will, and you know, I had a minor injury a couple of months ago, and I walked into Lake Forest Hospital emergency room, and they had all my records. I didn't have to schlep anything around, and I mean, that's just a little taste. It's still a little rough, but they're making great progress. So I think we owe it to the city and the future generations of people of Lake Foresters to really get behind this. And that doesn't mean we abandon controls. That doesn't mean that we do whatever or let the hospital just run roughshod. And I don't think that's going to happen here at all. So I just think, backing up for a second, we have an enormous opportunity here as a community to foster something that could be really good for a very, very long time. And I think we ought to keep that in mind as we move our way through the process over the next several years. I do have a couple of questions. One is, you know, practically speaking, working with the Illinois Department of Transportation is not the easiest thing in the world to do, especially when the state's broke. So I'm wondering to what extent there's been any kind of commitment. I mean, I know there's been you know, Susan Garrett has sort of deputized or been deputized to push this ahead, but she's not going to be there much longer. And I'm just curious what kinds of A, commitment, if there is any, B, concept of timeframes here, because the time frame that the rest of the world works on and IDOT's time frames aren't often the same. They tend to have sort of infinite time frames.
Mr. McAfee or one of his project team may have a more detailed response, but there is a strong commitment and strong support from IDOT for this project. This is moving forward. There is a time frame that's been established that is quite aggressive. Again, certainly understanding that everything might not go as planned with IDOT, but this project is moving forward.
Okay. Good. You know, I mean, I think it is a safety issue at this point when you drop down off of 41 in the middle of a rainstorm and you end up in a flood. I mean, how do you get to the hospital? So, you know, I mean, this is an you know, immediate concern. It's not just necessarily associated with the redevelopment.
And just to clarify, the right-in, right-out onto 41 is the project that is moving forward.
Right, that's my point.
Certainly the intersection is something we all need to get behind, and the Plan Commission really recognized that this hospital project can provide us all with leverage to try and work in a coordinated fashion to move that piece. But those are two very separate projects.
But when you're on your way to the hospital from the north, which is where most of the traffic comes from, and you get down off the ramp on, you know, off of 41 onto Deerpath, and it's, you know, it's blocked, that's not a good situation. And hopefully you're not in an ambulance. So the right in, right out, I think, is a big contributor to, at least from a safety point of view, you know, a big improvement. The second question I have is, there is, I am told, a deed restriction that Open Lands has on a portion of the site that limits building height. And I'm curious as to actually where those lines are vis-a-vis the height scale.
The line is approximately right in this area. Everything that the hospital wants to do, they actually could do by pushing it a little bit east. There is a deed restriction. The city is not party to it. I know that there are continued discussions with Open Lands and the hospital. I think it was the Plan Commission's hope that perhaps could be resolved so that we really could focus on what is the best plan for that central campus without being hampered by really what is an artificial restriction that was put in place many, many years certainly before this was envisioned.
Okay, but the master plan here, I think that the heights identified in these different quadrants, I think, exceed the deed restriction.
Yes, the Plan Commission felt it was important to look at this campus from the perspective of what makes sense from a good planning perspective. So I may be off a little bit, but I believe the 35-foot height limit runs just about through here, so it would impact this area. And the Plan Commission recognized that this 45 feet exceeds 35 feet, but they felt that allowing that opportunity to, if appropriate, have less rather than more surface parking, there certainly will be some. And then in looking at the 81-foot highest overlay district, again, allowing the flexibility to develop a good plan, a good overall site plan, and a good building design that isn't hampered by really a number that wasn't based on anything at the time it was put in place.
Okay. The 81-foot height is roughly the height of a normal 5 to 6 story building, if I did my math right. I mean, if you're assuming like 12.5 feet per story.
Old Main is about 85, 86, if that helps.
Including a cupola?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay. And then what about Lake Forest Place? Because that's, I don't know how tall the largest building there is. I'm just curious.
Lake Forest Place is not that tall.
Okay.
Someone in the audience might have the number. I don't have the number
And
for that.
but the power lines are what height?
The power lines that run along 41 and Deerpath, the taller one with the arms is 134 feet. The shorter one is 100 feet.
Okay. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Just a little follow-up, and I know we're not, the city's not privy to the deed restriction, but is it changeable? I mean, I kind of know the answer to it, but I mean, can you explain that?
I'm actually going
Let
to
them?
ask the city attorney to respond, or
I've not reviewed the actual document, but provided that the parties to it are prepared to amend it, then yes, it is subject to change.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Kathy from the council? What I'd like to do next then is, if the petitioner wants to make any brief comments, you're welcome to do so, and then we'll have any public here that wants to make some comments, and we'll bring it back here to the council again.
Thank you, Mayor Cowhey and City Council. Really, just on behalf of the Board of Trustees at Northwestern Lake Forest, our medical staff, our employees, and probably most importantly, our patients, thank you for the support and guidance and counsel that you've given us to date. I know I've had individual conversations over time regarding this initiative, and quite frankly, I'm just delighted to be in a position to advance a project of this scope and magnitude in our community. You're correct, Alderman, when you had referenced a few years back, the hospital's in a different place. The mandate to me was to position this organization for long-term success strategically, and also to really drive quality. And that's exactly what we've done. And Northwestern has been a fantastic partner in helping us achieve that. I could also say that I'd like to express my appreciation for Mr. Kiley and Mrs. Cerniak and the city staff throughout this process. It's not been an easy one, I have to say. I've been in front of this microphone, I think, somewhere in the range of 15 hours over the last 8 months, somewhere in that range. But I think that as a result of not only the interaction with the commissioners, the community, patients, and our campus partners and neighbors, that the plan in front of you is a solid one. It really does reflect great compromise by the hospital. I think we've been privileged with the foresight of our board in the past to allow us to acquire the property to provide great insulator to the neighbors. We're committed. In fact, it's been built into our guiding principles from the onset that we're absolutely committed to creating a open environment. You wouldn't see any developer commit 65% of open space on a campus of this significance. It's beautiful. We want to maintain that. We think we've done a good job over the last 113 years in demonstrating that we've been good stewards. But the hospital has to be replaced. Technology has changed, and I think that it's pretty clear to everyone that a hospital that was built in 1942 is not in a position to provide our surgeons, our physicians, our patients, for that matter, the environment of care that everyone would expect. The fact that we have been able to construct an opportunity, and I have to say that I don't know another peer that has the ability to invest $400 million into a new inpatient facility on the first phase alone, especially given the uncertainty on how healthcare may be financed. In fact, in the next month, it may, we may be starting from ground zero again, exactly how we're going to be paid when more than half of our revenues come from the federal government. So with that, again, I'd just like to express my appreciation for all of the players through this last year and a half. In fact, this has been something that I've been pushing for the last 6.5 years. The fact that it's coming close to realization is wonderful. I think that our goal is to quickly advance once we receive your approval, to the recruitment of a world-class architect. We will build this hospital from the inside out. That's important. We owe it to our patients and to everyone that visits that institution. Having said that, we don't think that that is incongruent with the community aesthetic that we all have grown to appreciate. To answer a few of the thoughts that were thrown out earlier, we have really made great effort to try to mitigate any impact that this project, this replacement facility, will have on the quality of life for every Lake Forester. Half of our patients, by the way, come from the north. So we really look to a 360-degree access. We really don't care the origin. We're here to serve everybody. We're not for profit. We also believe that the patterns will likely change over time as healthcare continues to consolidate. It is a dynamic period for all of us. We also think that it's important to note that the compromises that are incorporated into the document in front of you really do reflect our sincere wish to try to make our campus a better place in the future. So with respect to the concern about the stormwater implications, we agree. We have to make sure that we've got a safe way of maintaining the outflow of water and any impact we might have on the watershed with our presence. And in fact, moving forward, we've committed to taking a significant portion of the southern campus off of the existing grid moving forward. Substantial detention infrastructure, the roadway access improvements that we're proposing. We are working well with IDOT, and Senator Garrett and the city have been great in helping push that agenda. In fact, we plan to receive a permit in the end of this year and construction to commence in the spring of 2013. So that's absolutely something that we think is in everyone's interest. We did have restricted access onto the campus with a 100-year flood. It's important that we provide better access onto the campus, and nobody wants a safer intersection off of Deerpath and Westmoreland than the hospital. The last thing we want to do is generate business at our entrances with unsafe access conditions. So with that, I've been asked to make sure that I don't go on forever, but thank you for your help, and I'd love to entertain any questions you may
I
have.
appreciate your comments. Thank you. Do we have anybody from the public that wishes to make a comment? I would just say, if you do, just to reiterate that obviously the Plan Commission had this for 8 months, so we're not here to redo the work of the Plan Commission, but if you have anything to add, please do, and keep it to a shorter time frame for the sake of all of us after 9 o'clock tonight. So come on up and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, members of the City Council. My name is John Centel. I'm president of Lake Forest Open Lands. I live at 545 Circle Lane. On behalf of our directors and our governors, I want to offer our organization's support for Northwestern Hospital and its plans to expand as defined in the special use permit and the conditions set forth in the ordinance that's been presented here tonight. More importantly, we want to genuinely thank the city, the Plan Commission, and the hospital for hearing our voice on this important issue and favorably considering and incorporating many of our suggestions into the current ordinance. Lake Forest Open Lands looks forward to the next phase of the detailed process as proposed by the city and to working in partnership with the hospital and the community to move forward building what we know will be a first-class hospital and campus that embraces the values and character of our exceptional community. We support the hospital, and we remain willing and ready to serve on the city's advisory committee to assist our community as this project moves forward. So thank you all for listening and for all your efforts on behalf of our community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else?
Can I say something?
You may. I didn't think we'd get away without hearing from you.
Well, one thing I can guarantee you, they won't keep you from dying. I don't care what hospital it is. But I will guarantee you.
Well, that's inevitable.
That it doesn't make any difference. You know you're going to die. We're going to lose Lake Forest, people, just with the traffic alone. And I'll guarantee you that that's going to happen. I won't guarantee you're going to live, but I guarantee you're going to be in trouble with traffic. And they could tell you anything they want. Coming from the north, doesn't make any difference. We're going to get tied up. I hope that you do it right. Turn it down. They'll find another place.
Thanks for your comments. Any other comments from the public this evening? If not, I'd then bring it back here to any other discussion. Any other questions? Anyone else you'd like to ask? Yes.
Yeah. This is comments and questions?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I'm fully supportive of the hospital's master plan. I welcome a world-class medical facility, and hope that as the years pass, it's better than what we all anticipate. Having said that, I do have some concerns. Traffic is the biggest concern of all. And I know there's a lot of variables that have to be dealt with, and Kathy's sincere when she tells us IDOT says we can't have a four-way interchange up there. But if you start at Route 22, there's a four-way interchange. Coming north at Everett Road, there's a four-way ingress-egress, not with off-on ramps, but they put a traffic signal in there. Next north from Everett Road is Wesley Road. Same thing, no ramps, but a traffic signal. Then you get to Route 60, which is single-loaded, so to speak, because there's no arterial coming in from the east side, but there's a traffic signal at Route 60. Deerpath, we've got the ramps so that you don't need a traffic light. I think there's a point in time when we should be tired of IDOT pushing us around and tell them it's mandatory. We want a four-way ingress-egress up at this new proposed on-off ramp. Because like Dr. Tack pointed out, there are going to be people coming from the north wanting to go back to the north. I feel it's critical that the new gateway to the hospital is this new interchange at 41. And I see no reason why, if we all stay on it, it can't be a four-way interchange. I think that's critical. I hope the building will be LEED certified. I urge you to work with Lake Forest Open Lands. As much as this can be a world-class hospital, it can also be a world-class example to what we do with the open space up there. With respect to the draft ordinance itself, the city managers to appoint Technical and Design Advisory Committee. This is a big enough project in contrast to the water filtration plant that was pretty much out of sight, out of mind. This is going to be like an aircraft carrier right in everybody's face. I'd like for you to consider that the city manager appoints the Technical and Design Advisory Committee with consent from City Council. I think we should have some role in that. And those are my comments.
Any other comments from council members? No? If not, we're done with discussion. I'd entertain a motion to grant the first reading.
I move to grant first reading.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Our next item on the agenda this evening is new business. Do we have any other new business this evening? If not, any other additional items for discussion? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.